crossing the Douluo Continent, unexpectedly becoming the son of Chenxin, Chenyuan. At the beginning, awaken the martial soul. Everyone else is a weapon martial soul, a beast martial soul, and even if it doesn't work out, it's still a blue silver grass or something. But when it comes to oneself, why is the martial soul just a broken barrier? Why is this sword gate so familiar? When Chenyuan's familiar memories flashed through his mind, and he looked at his sword gate martial soul, his heart was greatly shocked. Is it surprising that I am still the one in a million innate full soul power after awakening? So, when Chenyuan became a soul master, the sword gate was broken and the 7 divine swords were born. Due to the intervention of the dust source and the relationship between Ning Fengji and his own cheap father, the 7 treasures Liuli Sect dominates. Tang Men came to recruit the cage, but he turned a blind eye and even became enemies with Tang San. Before leaving, Tang San even gave Chenyuan a sentence. The 7 treasures glass sect has a way to take death. I don't know if you will die or not, but Tang San, there will definitely be a calamity in the future. Of course, the 7 treasures glass sect tree caught the wind and naturally suffered a blow from the martial soul hall. The 7 elders of the martial soul hall have all come out, and the calamity of the 7 treasures glass sect is approaching. Ning Fengji and Chenxin joined hands to fight against each other, and ultimately exhausted their strength to fight against the 7 title-level powerhouses. They dealt a heavy blow to 6 people but still lost. But just as the 7 treasures glass sect fell into darkness, everyone's hearts were as dead as ashes. Chenyuan carried a broken sword gate and stood on top of the 7 treasures glass sect. 6 swords emerged from the gate, and his divine power shook the entire continent. I have a sword that can slay titles and gods. It can open the heavenly gate. Keywords of the novel. Douluo. Son of the dust heart, slaying the gods with one sword. No pop-up window, Douluo. Son of the dust heart, slay the god with one sword. Download the complete TXT collection, Douluo. Son of the dust heart, slash the god with one sword. Latest chapter reading. Chapter 1. Through Douluo, am I the son of the dust heart? You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 1. Through Douluo, am I the son of the dust heart? Entering a state of tranquility, entering a state of emptiness. Those who are skilled in using swords have nothing else in their hearts, only the sword is with them. The sound of a sharp blade cuts through everyone's hearts. The man standing in front of the big square with a slightly dissatisfied expression, completely out of sync with his voice, looked at a boy. Chenyuan, your mood is in chaos. Chenyuan suddenly regained his senses and was hit by the sword spine on his lower leg, stumbling and sitting on the ground. Chenyuan stared blankly at the man in front of him and the disciples practicing on the square. I was just slacking off, how could I come in an instant? The intense pain in his mind made Chenyuan groan. A large amount of fragmented memories also entered the mind of Dust Source. I have traveled through this time, arrived in the Douluo Continent. And became the son of Chenxin. Having clarified his identity a bit, Chenyuan looked at the man standing beside him with some disbelief. Chenxin wore a spotless snow-white robe on his heart and body, with white hair strands and a head of silver long hair combed in a cage at the back of his head. His sword eyebrows were starry and he could be called a hero. Time seems to have never left a mark on him, his skin is as delicate as a baby, and he looks more like a cultivator. This is the protector Douluo of the 7 treasures glass sect, the supreme elder sitting on the throne, and the sword Douluo dust heart at level 97. Chenyuan couldn't help but secretly admire this fairy-like man. Chenxin's life can be said to be incredibly brilliant. Awakening from his childhood, he wielded the 7-kill sword with his martial soul, dominating the world without a single defeat. During his travels and training, he became close friends with Rongrong. After breaking through the title Douluo, he became acquainted with Ning Fengji at first sight and joined the 7 treasures glass sect, becoming an elder on the throne. This alone cannot highlight the power of Chenxin. His existence is extremely unique. In the 7 treasures of the glass sect, the status of Chenxin is even more transcendent. It can be called the heavenly white jade pillar of the 7 treasures of the glass sect, the purple golden beam of the sea, and the 2 protective gods of the 7 treasures of the glass sect, together with Rongrong. The 7 treasures glass sect has always ranked among the top among the 7 major sects, and the existence of Chenxin is indispensable. It can be said that it has achieved mutual success with the 7 treasures glass sect. If it weren't for this, Ning Fengji wouldn't have respected Chenxin so much. However, Chenyuan was slightly taken aback, as he had read the original work on Blue Star. The outcome of the future of Chenxin is also clear to nature. In the current time, Tang Sankai awakened his martial soul. But a few years later, Tang San was born, and the 7 treasures glass sect followed the trend of contact with Tang San. The original solicitation turned out to be an accident, and Tang San was unable to join the 7 treasures glass sect. When Ning Fengji was treating Tang San later, Xiao Wu's identity was exposed together, and Chenxin was able to shake back for Douluo, who came with a sword. And in the Kendo incident that followed, the martial soul hall poured out and launched an action to destroy the sect. In this operation, the martial soul hall dispatched more than 5 titled Douluo and a large number of troops to attack. The blue electric Tyrannosaurus dragon sect directly destroyed the sect, and the 7 treasures glass sect benefited from the existence of the dust heart to retain its incense. And under this battle, Chenxin was also besieged by 5 titled Douluo, who besieged the 7 treasures of the glass sect. Chenxin alone occupied it, resulting in 2 deaths and 3 injuries. Although he made every effort to protect the 7 treasures of the glass sect, he was also cut off as a result. After this battle, the cultivation level of Chenxin plummeted, and he was stuck at level 97 for life and could not take any further steps. Being unable to touch the peak has also become a regret for the Heart of Dust. In the final battle between the 2 gods, Cheng became a brick on the path of Tang Sanqing's gods at Jiaoling Pass. In order to buy them time, he exhausted all his strength to block the attacks of the 2 gods. Died at the hands of the martial soul hall. Chenxin's entire life was filled with many regrets. But now it's different, I know everything myself. Chenxin sat on the side, urging Chenyuan with a kind father's stern tone, don't get up yet. When are you planning to sit on the ground? Today's basic sword moves are not over yet. Chenyuan patted the ash on his buttocks and stood up, breathing silently. Under the guidance of Chenxin, he picked up his sword again and waved his sword moves. Pull, prick. Sword is the ruler of 100 soldiers, the weapon of a gentleman, and a symbol of attack and defeat. If you want to use a good sword, you need to infuse your mind and spirit into it, and your ultimate goal is to integrate people and swords. Shua. The silver sword swept through the air in the hands of the dust source, lingering in the mid-air and echoing with sword sounds. The body naturally becomes proficient in using sword moves, which have become a muscle skill. Chenyuan kept adjusting his breath with his movements, his gaze surrounding the entire 7 treasures glass sect. There is no appearance of war or tightness around. All the disciples were focused on practicing, but compared to the auxiliary martial soul of the 7 treasures glass pagoda, Chenyuan was somewhat unique in practicing sword moves alone in this place. But no one dares to say anything, because he is now the son of Chenxin. Among the entire 7 treasures and glass sect, only 2 have the right to speak. When Chenxin speaks, Ning Fengji also needs to consider a 3-part balance. Amidst his gaze, an orange figure burst into view. With her graceful figure and character's appearance, Chenyuan is somewhat familiar with this figure. The head of the 7 treasures glass sect and the daughter of Ning Fengji. Ning Rongrong. Since Ning Rongrong has not yet left the sect and his body is still young, he looks just 6 or 7 years old. Compared to time, Tang San has only been traveling for about 6 years now. This is the time to awaken the martial soul. He will awaken blue silver grass and Haotian hammer, and embark on the path of counterattack. After realizing the situation, Chenyuan couldn't help but smile. And I also crossed over and became the son of Sword Dust Heart. Also titled Douluo's son. In terms of attack, Chenxin wields the 7-kill sword, and there are few people in the world who can match it, not weaker than Tang Hao by half. In this way, the father, who is also a time traveler and has a top-level title Douluo, has a completely different treatment. In terms of teaching children, compared to Tang Hao's free-range treatment of Tang San, Chenxin is the basic move of Chenyuan in the 7 Treasures Glass Sect every day. Jing Jin is even more visible to the naked eye. Zhema steps down from the source of dust, slowly exhaling the turbid qi from the outlet during operation, and following the teachings of the dust heart to operate the soul power in the body. My mood was filled with excitement for a moment. Chenxian's body was suspended in mid-air, and he sat down with a hanging silver sword, which was his martial soul 7-kill sword. He watched as Chenyuan's emotions surged unprecedentedly, and he vaguely felt the threshold in his sword moves. Subconsciously, he blurted out, "Not bad." Chenyuan was not arrogant either, bowing and saying, "It's all because of your guidance, father." That's all for today's sword training. Chenxian nodded with satisfaction, grabbed Chenyuan with one hand, and flew towards the hall with the 7-kill sword. Chenyuan turned his head in confusion and asked, "Father, I used to practice swordsmanship until the rising moon. Today, this is." Chenxian remained calm and pointed to his 7-kill sword, repeating, "Today you are 6 years old. It is the day of awakening the martial soul." End of this chapter. Chapter 2. Sword Gate Martial Soul. 6 swords in the gate, there are 9 sword moves. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 2 Sword Gate Martial Soul. 6 swords in the gate, there are 9 sword moves. In the main hall, most of the sect members gather. Even Ning Fengji was close, and he looked at Chenyuan kindly as if to his own son. "Chenyuan, you can count it." This kind gesture made Ning Rongrong on the side dissatisfied. As if Chenyuan was competing with him for his father, he held Ning Fengji's hand and pouted fiercely at Chenyuan. Chenyuan was not yet able to argue with a child, but simply bowed to Ning Fengji, saying, "Uncle Ning, thank you for your kindness. Today is the day when Master Ning personally presides over the awakening of your martial soul. Don't be nervous, just maintain a calm mind," said Chenxian calmly, with a hint of curiosity in his eyes. What kind of martial soul will one's own son awaken? The crowd in the main hall was also eagerly anticipating. As the son of Sword Douluo, he was born with high expectations. Ning Fengji has never mistreated Chenyuan in terms of cultivation resources, and it seems that everyone has recognized it. With the blessing of the 7 Treasures Glass Sect and even the lifelong experience of Sword Douluo Chenxin. In the future, the realm of the Dust Source will definitely surpass the blue, and even surpass the Dust Heart. Ning Fengji slowly walked down from his seat and drew a 6-pointed star formation on the ground. After putting 6 brilliant peerless gemstones into it, he gently lifted the palm of Chenyuan to stimulate his soul power. 6 gemstones located at one corner began to emit a dazzling light, and everyone's breath also froze. Staring at the formation, even if there was a possibility of being injured by the flicker of light, he didn't want to move his gaze away and stared fixedly at the dust source inside. Buzz. The sound flashed by, and there was no obvious change on the body, not a beast martial soul. There are no plants around, and it is not a plant-based martial soul. Everyone breathed a sigh of relief, then it could only be a martial soul. After all, Chenyuan is the son of Chenxin, and his martial soul should be the 7-kill sword. But what about swords? Everyone looked at the center of the formation in surprise. The end of the radiance represents the successful awakening of the martial soul. But Chenyuan's hand did not show Chenxian's beautiful 7-kill sword. Instead, A sword gate made of rosewood and ebony appeared at the center of the formation. From a distance, there is neither sharpness nor soul power emanating, just an ordinary broken wooden box. The people of the Seven Treasures Glass Sect suddenly became confused. The awakening of the martial soul is a broken wooden box. Did Chenxin's son awaken to this? It's just a 7-kill sword. What are you planning on doing with this broken wooden box, using it as a coffin for someone? Isn't it? Why did you wake up like this? The people in the hall heard the whispers of Soa Soa discussing, but due to the fact that Chenxin was still here, they also dare not discuss loudly. After all, no matter what, Chenyuan is also the son of Chenxin. He is an elder on the throne, and before the elder speaks, how dare others provoke him? This Chenyuan was confused, and his empty brain had no time to care about the others around him. They, who are native to Douluo Continent, naturally cannot know what this martial soul is. But Chenyuan knows. This is the sword box of Jian Jiuhuang. And in this sword box, all are world-renowned swords. The sword is known throughout the world as the weapon of a gentleman. 10 famous swords, there are 6 in the box. Huanglu, Dragon and Snake, 3000, Parallel Lotus, Floating and Sinking, Sunshine. 6 swords. Each handle is a transcendent existence, and there are also sword moves. One move can be found in heaven and earth, and there are 9 sword moves, which are even more terrifying. However, the dust source is also somewhat uncertain. Although this sword move is powerful, can it really be used in the Douluo Continent? There is no prior experience at all. Chenyuan also felt a bit helpless. It seems like I can only be the one who eats crabs first. This martial soul is not inferior to the 7-kill sword, only strong but not weak. If one can cultivate, let it go naturally. The sighs around couldn't be suppressed. Isn't this the 7-kill sword? Yeah, why is it a broken wooden box? Elder Chen, what's wrong with Chenyuan? The event of awakening the martial soul cannot be played around. If the 7-kill sword is here, why use a broken wooden box to fool us? Isn't it clear that the martial soul is just a sword box? Chenyuan just casually said, "You all worry too much, my martial soul is exactly this sword box." You didn't read it wrong. What I awakened was not the 7-kill sword. There are constant boos, and even now many people find it difficult to believe this fact. But the martial soul of Chenyuan has already been presented to everyone, and they have to accept it if they don't accept it. Hope is as great as disappointment. The booing around made Ning Fengji, who had awakened his martial soul, feel a bit embarrassed. Ning Rongrong, on the other hand, came over and didn't mind the commotion. She only knew that this guy who was vying for her father's favor did not awaken a good martial soul. It's not their 7 treasures glass pagoda, nor is it Uncle Chen's martial soul 7-kill sword. Ning Rongrong grabbed Ning Fengji's elbow and pointed to the sword box, saying, "It's just a broken wooden box, not like Uncle Chen at all. How can this kind of martial soul inherit Uncle Chen's mantle in the future and take on the important responsibility of the 7 treasures glass sect?" As soon as these words were spoken, the voices of the many disciples gathered around him were immediately expressed. They are hard to say, it's because of unequal identities. But Ning Rongrong is different. She is Ning Fengji's daughter, and no one in the world spoils her more than Ning Fengji. Rongrong, don't talk nonsense. Chenyuan's talent has not yet awakened, how can you judge with just one sentence? Ning Fengji gave Ning Rongrong a symbolic reprimand and knocked his head. That's right, that's right. Ning Rongrong's eyes immediately turned red as he swayed and played around on the side. Ning Fengji also had a headache and could only start the next task as soon as possible. Staying stuck here may be a significant blow to the dust source. Ning Fengji helped the lens and raised his head to look at Chenxin in the distance, gesturing in his eyes. Chenxin's son did not awaken the top-level martial soul of the 7-kill sword, but instead awakened a sword box. No one believes it even when it's said, and it's even more of a slippery trap in the world. Ning Fengji, who helped him awaken his martial soul, may have to bear the blame. Chenxin nodded nonchalantly, his gaze always focused on Chenyuan. It's not important whether Chenyuan can awaken the 7-kill sword, what's important is this state of mind. Chenxin values this very much, and Chenyuan's emotions are even beyond his expectations. If one fails to awaken their father's top martial soul, according to normal human thinking, they will experience ups and downs. And in such ups and downs, it usually drags down a person's mood. From perfection to fragmentation, it's just a fleeting moment. But Chenyuan did not. After awakening his martial soul, his expression remained unchanged except for a brief surprise. It seems that what awakens is not his martial soul, but an insignificant matter. This state of mind has already surpassed the vast majority on the mainland. Ning Fengji no longer procrastinated, but instructed Chenyuan to take out a soul power test ball and let him place it on it. Chenyuan followed suit and wanted to see how much talent he had after awakening his sword box. Buzz. The crystal ball kept operating under the incredible gaze of everyone. Suddenly emitting a blue light illuminating the hull. Ning Fengji and Chenxin couldn't help but exclaim in unison, "This is innate full soul power." End of this chapter. Chapter 3. Innate Soul Power. Breaking through the Soul Master, let's all unleash the Divine Sword. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 3. Innate Soul Power. Breaking through the Soul Master, let's all unleash the Divine Sword. Only a loud slap could be heard in the main hall. Just now, everyone who mocked Chenyuan only felt their faces were hot and spicy. Dust Source, Innate Full Soul Power. Ning Fengji was momentarily dumbfounded. My nephew is actually born with full soul power, which does not diminish my identity. The people inside the hall were immediately speechless. Ning Rongrong was also anxious, holding on to Ning Fengji with both hands and constantly asking, "Dad, what's the situation? Isn't he a useless martial soul? Why were the elders and disciples helping themselves just now, and now they are all silent?" Rongrong, Yuaner's talent can be said to be extremely excellent, even to a level that few people in the whole continent can match. Ning Fengji breathed a sigh of relief and kindly rubbed Ning Rongrong's hair to explain. Listening to Ning Fengji's tone, Ning Rongrong is already intelligent and naturally knows some things. She took an incredible 2 steps back, watching the dust source activate the complete soul ball. In the entire hall, only a few elders were still defending, but even if it's innate soul power, the martial soul is a hard wound. Although Chenyuan is not inferior to Elder Chenxin in terms of talent, what is the role of this martial soul? After all, even if the talent is good and the martial soul is not much better, future achievements will still be delayed. It seems like finding a vent. Everyone burst out together again. Ning Fengji was also difficult to answer, just withdrew the soul power ball and looked up at Chenxin, who had not spoken for a long time. Ning Fengji asked tentatively, "Uncle Chen, Yuan heir has already awakened. Although he has exceptional talent, his martial soul is." Chenxin coldly asked back, "Fengji, do you also feel the same way?" This sentence directly overturned Ning Fengji, neither saying nor not saying it. But we cannot remain silent. If we remain silent, wouldn't it mean we have agreed? Ning Fengji pondered for a moment and said in detail, "Since Yuan heir can awaken his innate full soul power, his talent is naturally extraordinary. However, innate full soul power not only represents exceptional talent, but also often means that it will not be a useless martial soul. Perhaps Yuan heir's martial soul is currently lacking in sharpness, and may achieve great success in the future." Many people are hesitant to speak. After all, even discerning people can see that Ning Fengji is just comforting Chenxin and not directly stating it. Chenxin frowned slightly as she gazed at the sword box, summoning the 7-kill sword and pacing towards Chenyuan's side. Chenxin juxtaposed the 7-kill sword with the sword box and expressed his own opinion. This redwood and purple sandalwood sword gate may seem ordinary, but I have a feeling. My 7-kill sword can't hold on to this sword box, but it has a slightly inferior feeling. Hush. Everyone couldn't help but take a cold breath upon hearing this. As one of the top weapons and martial souls in the world, the 7-kill sword has been suppressed by an unnamed sword box. If you speak it out, you may be laughed off as a joke by people all over the world. Unfortunately, this sentence comes from the hands of Chenxin. But it's not difficult to understand. After all, the person who awakens the sword box is their own son. He couldn't possibly demote the dust source to nothing. I just came up with a way to make Chenyuan happier. Thinking of this, everyone suddenly understood, remained silent and understood. Chenxin didn't intend to waste any more words with these ignorant elders. She just turned around and explained to Ning, grabbed Chenyuan's collar and flew out. At a gallop, Chenyuan stood on the 7-kill sword, feeling the mystery of flying in the sky. The mighty long wind swept by, and those Su Bingling made the dust source clearer. There was a moment of silence between father and son. Chenyuan glanced at Chenxin and asked tentatively, "Father, where are we going?" Since leaving the main hall, Chenxin has remained silent. But rather wielding a sword, galloping in the sky with a source of dust, straight towards a precise destination. Chenyuan has a premonition that with the cultivation of Chenxin, it is impossible not to see anything. Chenxin stood sideways and wrapped his soul power around Chenyuan to prevent him from flying out. Chenxin looked at her son Yu and said, "Since you have awakened your martial soul, you have innate soul power. I naturally want to take you to the starry forest, hunt soul beasts to obtain soul rings, and break through the shackles." The mundane narration of the heart, with no worries in the words. Hunting soul beasts. If it were just a broken wooden box as everyone said, a level 10 soul warrior wanting to hunt down a suitable soul beast would be like seeking his own way of death. But Chenxin definitely wouldn't do such a thing, which means he still saw the extraordinary nature of the sword box. It's just that the elders of the 7 Treasures Glass sect have insufficient vision and cannot see it. Chenyuan no longer pretended and confessed to Chenxin, "I think my father also noticed a slight difference in my martial soul." Just as you guessed, father, it's not a broken wooden box. Upon hearing this, Chenxin's eyes flickered with a hint of brilliance and he murmured, sword box, what is the purpose of a sword box?" Father and son spoke in unison, "Save the sword." Speaking of which, Chenxin had already become familiar with Chenyuan's martial soul. The sword box is used for storing swords, so there must be a sword among them first. Chenyuan politely added, "Father, that's all. But I'm not sure what's going on inside the sword box either. There is no time to explain or release in the main hall. After all, everyone has already recognized that this is like a useless soul. Chenyuan also doesn't want to waste his time getting stubborn with those stubborn old men." Chenxin just smiled knowingly, his fingers clasped together, and his 7-kill sword suddenly accelerated. It doesn't matter, the sword box may be a limitation, and all of this will be revealed when you obtain the first soul ring. The words have not yet finished. The 7-kill sword carried the two of them across a long rainbow in the sky, leaving a phantom in mid-air. In the blink of an eye, I have already left the 7 Treasures Glass sect for an unknown distance. Standing in the sky, one can overlook the edge of the starry forest in the distance. The massive spiritual power of the dust heart dissipated, and the spiritual power was woven into sharp blades like silk, sweeping the entire periphery. Almost in an instant, Chenxin had already found a white tiger in the vast network of spiritual power emanating. The cultivation period is 422 years, which perfectly meets the limit period of the first soul ring. Flowing light fell, and the dust heart withdrew its 7-kill sword, standing on the earth with the dust source. Chenxin was not hesitant, raising his hand to summon from afar, and suddenly a silver sword flew over the horizon. Chenxin threw the sword to Chenyuan and said, "Before you can use your martial soul, use this sword to obtain your first soul ring. I will press the formation for you and see to what extent you can do it." Chenyuan clenched his sword, a familiar feeling permeating his muscles. He gazed at the white tiger on one side, and with the pressure of the dust heart, he almost effortlessly solved it. Waiting for Chenyuan to absorb the first soul ring, there seems to be a slight change in the sword box. Breakthrough Soul Master. Open your eyes with the dust source. Come on. The sword gate opens wide, 6 divine swords come out together. End of this chapter. Chapter 4. Sword opening dust and dragon snake walking. Father, who was banned, was stunned. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 4. Sword opening dust and dragon snake walking. Father, who was banned, was stunned. In the sword box, 6 swords awaken. Huanlu, dragon and snake, 3000, parallel lotus, floating and sinking, sun shining 6 swords. In addition to being amazed, Chenyuan left him with more shock. Chenyuan felt that his martial soul was not just this sword box. The 6 divine swords in the sword box are also their own martial souls, and each of them emits waves of intimidation. This also means that I actually have 7 martial souls. Congenital full soul power is already extremely rare. The twin martial souls are even more boundless. And I am truly 7 martial souls. Superb talent is by no means comparable to that of ordinary people. The bright yellow soul ring quietly appeared around the dust source. It can be used almost subconsciously, and its name and taboo are deeply ingrained in the mind and difficult to forget. The first soul skill. Sword 1, one sword opens the dust and walks the dragon and snake. The sharp and murderous sword intent is constantly flying. Chenxin looked in shock at the sword box that suddenly opened after absorbing the soul ring. There are 6 swords in the middle of the sword box, and each one has its own unique features, allowing it to be free for thousands of years. But without exception, the power of these 6 divine swords is weaker than that of the 7-kill sword, and even stronger. Among them, the fierce aura is superior in killing. So terrifying. Chenxin also took a cold breath, and even his sword heart trembled slightly. The presence of a sword in the martial soul is already an accident. And there are 6 divine swords in the sword box, which are completely martial souls that have never been seen before in the Douluo Continent. Chenyuan's talent is so outstanding. Not weaker than half of oneself in the past, and even more outstanding than blue. I may not have a 30% chance of winning when I encountered the current dust source back then. Chenxin looked at the redwood purple sandalwood sword box, which was criticized as a useless soul, with some shock. This thing called a broken wooden box is actually used to seal these 6 divine swords. No wonder, no wonder. Chenxin sighed repeatedly. Even after sealing 6 divine swords in the sword box, one can only detect some unusual aura in their own cultivation. In this way, it is not surprising that the elders and demeanor of the 7 treasures glass sect cannot be seen. Chenxin stared at the closure of the sword box on the side, and in the darkness, there seemed to be a feeling. My son, there is a divine posture. Dust Fate closed the sword box, and the aura of the divine sword disappeared instantly. Chenyuan walked forward and looked at Chenxin, whose eyes were somewhat relaxed, not knowing where his thoughts had drifted. Father, father. Chenyuan could only wave his hand in front of Chenxin. The presence of all 6 divine swords in the sword box was indeed somewhat unexpected. But what's wrong with Chenxin's reaction, which seems to be bigger than himself? Is it difficult because he thinks it's not enough? Chenxin regained his composure and held on to Chenyuan's shoulder, saying in a deep voice, Chenyuan, others don't know their talents. This sword box's martial soul is unparalleled in the world, and your talent should be limitless in the future. During this period, be cautious of arrogance and impatience, and explore this martial soul as soon as possible. It is destined to have unlimited possibilities. Without waiting for Chenyuan to say anything, Chenxin immediately pulled him back and stepped on the 7-kill sword with great enthusiasm. In mid-air. Despite the fierce wind, Chenxin's words could also enter Chenyuan's ears. Since my son has such a martial soul, it must not be buried. Fengji doesn't know, but when he talks to him, with Fengji's shrewd thinking, he naturally understands the importance behind it. Inside the main hall of the 7 Treasures Glass Sect. At this moment, there are no other people in the hall. Only Ning Fengji handled some trivial matters and accompanied Ning Rongrong to play in the main hall. This situation is also normal, and the people of the 7 Treasures Glass Sect dote on this little princess. In order to avoid Ning Rongrong getting angry, these disciples naturally avoided the main hall. After all, for them, Ning Rongrong was also out of sight and out of mind. Ning Fengji happily picked up Ning Rongrong and doted on her forehead, saying, "Hey, my little princess, when will you grow up?" Ning Rongrong is also very good at acting coquettishly, tightly grasping Ning Fengji's thoughts and saying, "Well, Rongrong just needs to follow his father," between father and daughter intimacy. A sound of pacing echoed from the empty hall. Tick, the sound naturally reached Ning Fengji's ears. Ning Fengji followed the sound to look, and it was none other than Chenxin who came. Chenxin is accompanied by Chenyuan, and there is also a bright yellow century-old soul ring. Ning Fengji walked down from his seat, put on his suede jacket, and took a few steps to chat with Chenxin. "Uncle Chen, what's the point of being in such a hurry?" Ning Fengji looked at the century-old soul ring of Chenyuan and said in confusion, "Have you already obtained the first soul ring in such a short time? Is it a bit rushed?" The action-oriented faction of Chenxin naturally takes reality as the basis and beckons towards the source of dust. Chenyuan also understood and summoned the sword box out under the puzzled gaze of Ning Fengji. "Come on. Sword box open, divine sword out." Ning Fengji, who was about to say something, suddenly fell silent, with a shock in her eyes as she scrutinized the 6 divine swords. And the treasure-hunting talent of the 7 Treasures Glass Pagoda is constantly buzzing. Chenxin saw that the effect had been achieved and immediately continued, "I have realized that Yuan Heir's martial soul is not limited to the surface. Under the seemingly ordinary sword box, there are 6 extraordinary swords, each of which is stronger than my 7-kill sword. It's not an exaggeration to say it's a divine-level martial soul. Currently, Yuan Heir has obtained the first soul ring, and in order to go further, Yuan Heir also needs a lot of resources to cultivate." Chenxin did not beat around the bush, but directly explained his purpose. After all, in order to truly cultivate a top talent, resource allocation is inevitable. Ning Fengji looked at Chenyuan's 6 divine swords and also at Chenxin's expression. The talent of the 7 Treasures Glass Pagoda does not include deceiving oneself, that is to say. Chenyuan's talent is just like this, with top-level martial souls, as long as there are enough resources to grow. With the cultivation of top-notch Douluo Chenxin, our future achievements will only be high and not low. Uncle Chen, I am already aware of what you said. Ning Fengji paused slightly and made an extremely bold decision. In the future, the 7 Treasures Glass Sect will make every effort to cultivate Ning Rongrong in Yuan Heir, with resources divided equally. What do you think? Even if Ning Fengji is the sect leader, he still chooses to seek the opinions of Chenxin in this regard. Chenxin naturally didn't say much. Ning Fengji was already fully cultivated, just nodded with satisfaction. Ning Rongrong, who was standing beside him, didn't want to get up and said, "Daddy, why should I allocate the resources given to this person? I'm not convinced, I don't want it. Those resources should have been mine." Inexplicable, inexplicable. Ning Rongrong looked at Chenyuan beside him in anger, eager to bite this despicable guy with his hands and mouth. Originally, Grandpa Chen's love was his own, and his father's love was also his own. Because of Chenyuan, everything has been taken away now. Ning Fengji furrowed her eyebrows and whispered to the rogue Ning Rongrong, Rongrong, no nonsense. This matter is a joint discussion between you and Grandpa Chen. How could you be allowed to cause trouble? With a scolding, Ning Rongrong suddenly picked up his hand in injustice. Turn around and walk into the hall. End of this chapter. Chapter 5. Enlightenment Full, Soul Power Breakthrough. 7 Treasures Glass Sect Divine Sun. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 5. Enlightenment Full, Soul Power Breakthrough. 7 Treasure Glass Sect Divine Sun. Rongrong has such a bad temper, so don't take it to heart, nephew. Ning Fengji carries a hint of apology. How could such a trivial matter be taken seriously by the source of dust, and treated with courtesy? Uncle Ning is joking, Uncle Ning is so devoted to this kid. If I continue to be restless, the sword heart that I have been cultivating since childhood will not agree. Uncle and nephew met and coincidentally smiled together. Ning Fengji's face was only filled with satisfaction. Seeing things, there is basically no room for intervention. Chenyuan took 2 steps back and bowed with both hands, saying, Father, Uncle Ning, Yuan heir is still continuing his cultivation today, so he will step down first. Go ahead, don't be impatient or arrogant when practicing, just maintain a calm mind. Ning Fengji gave a little guidance and also allowed Chenyuan to leave. In an instant. In the entire hall, only Chenxin and Ning Fengji remained. The two of them are both good friends and confidants, and they know some things from heart to heart. Ning Fengji sat down at the table and brewed a pot of tea. He looked at the direction of Chenyuan's departure outside the door and said leisurely, Uncle Chen, how far do you think Yuan heir's future can go? Chenxin sat down at the opposite table, pinching her hands and lifting her teacup in mid-air, abruptly stopping the tea without any fluctuation. Chenxin closed her eyes and sipped her tea before finally pouring out a sentence. I don't know. I don't know. Ning Fengji was also somewhat surprised. Is it difficult to achieve a future where even you can't see through Yuan? Chenxin put down the teacup and shook his head, saying, It's confusing, as if shrouded in darkness, and the depth of it is beyond my knowledge. Quickly, Chenxin threw out a powerful sentence. But all I know is that my son has the posture of becoming a god. Ning Fengji's hands trembled slightly. He never doubted Chenxin's words, and he even knew what kind of person Chenxin was. Saying this sentence proves that he made a decision after careful consideration. Being able to say that a person is a great talent is the highest evaluation of demons by Chenxin. But saying that a person becomes a god at least proves it. Chenxin believes that her talent is far inferior to that of her son. Okay. Ning Fengji burst out laughing and looked at the dome of the hall beating his legs, feeling incredibly happy. First there was the Rongrong colorful goddess, and then there was the extraordinary talent of Chenyuan. This is the heavenly blessing for the rise of the 7 treasures of the glass sect. The sea of clouds rises and falls, and the sunlight shines faintly. Fragmented sunlight scattered on the practice field. Chenyuan sat cross-legged on the stone carving, with a sword box placed beside him. In the box, there was a sword moving in the air with his mind. Soul power precisely controls the movement trajectory of the sword, and the sharp killing energy on the sword will leave clear echoes wherever it passes by. Chenyuan closed his eyes and focused, his entire body soaked in sweat from practicing martial arts. He pressed against his torso, revealing distinct muscular lines. However, his still youthful face had a maturity that did not match his age. The surging soul power in the veins immediately attracted a large crowd to watch. All the disciples gathered around are from the 7 Treasures Glass Sect. Everyone looked up at the person who had been given high hopes and couldn't help but marvel at it. On the day of awakening, someone even said that Chenyuan's martial soul was a discarded wooden box. Now it seems like they're all farting. The noisy voices were discussed in waves, and all of these noises were filtered out by the dust source as if it were a breeze. In my heart, there is only the refinement of soul power. The soul power inside the body has increased once again, and the control of the sword has become more proficient, almost breaking the shackles. Since the allocation of resources was determined, Chenyuan began to practice day after day, and it has been a year since he fully calculated today. In this short year, the daily time of the dust source has been almost completely arranged. Cultivate oneself, practice swordsmanship, and enhance soul power. In order to improve his physical and mental abilities, Chenxin even banned Chenyuan's soul power and allowed him to climb a kilometer-high mountain with bare hands. Daily life is like this, and it is under the supervision of the dust heart and devilish training that the body becomes incredibly resilient. The divine sword crisscrossing in the air suddenly emitted a buzzing sound. The second sword in the box also began to become increasingly restless. Until a sword roar pierced through the rainbow. Buzz. Chenyuan suddenly opened his eyes. The yellow house in the box flew together with the dragon and snake in the air, and the soul power that broke through the shackles suddenly emanated. Breakthrough. Level 20 Soul Master. The disciples who were watching below couldn't help but cheer and excite the sect. Hiss, is this a breakthrough? Is this already? Level 20. Hurry up. Report to the sect leader and elder sword quickly. At this moment, the entire Seven Treasures Glass sect is in a state of ecstasy. In 365 days, everyone witnessed the rise of a demon that coexisted effort and talent. His arduous cultivation fully unleashed his already extraordinary talents. No difficulties or hardships have stopped this junior brother's footsteps. The solid footprints of sweat and talent finally made Chenyuan take this step. The dust source sits on the stage, and sweat evaporates with the complete appearance of the sunrise. Compared to others, Chenyuan himself is actually much calmer. But he was equally excited in his heart, and the pleasure of being trapped for a long time filled his chest with pride. Upon learning the news, Ning Fengji and Chenxin hurriedly rushed to the training ground. Once landed, Ning Fengji then observed the soul power of Chenyuan up and down, and was pleasantly surprised to realize that everything was true. Ning Fengji couldn't help but feel excited from his words and quickly said to Chenxin, "Uncle Chen, Yuan air has really broken through. How long has it been since we reached the limit of a soul master? Get another soul ring and you will be able to break through the great soul master." Chenxin was equally relieved, but she reached out and vigorously patted Chenyuan's shoulder, everything in silence. Only 3 words were conveyed. "Well done." How could it be? Ning Rongrong, who was mixed in with the crowd, couldn't believe it for a moment, but quickly felt relieved. She finally understood why Ning Fengji at that time had reduced her resources by half and allocated them to Chenyuan for use. Relying solely on half of the support is faster than dedicating all one's strength. Even as proud as Ning Rongrong, at this moment, there is only admiration for Chenyuan in his heart. Ning Fengji saw that most of the disciples in the square were present. He calmed down and brought Ning Rongrong along. Immediately in front of all the disciples, he waved his hand loudly and announced, "Attention everyone in the sect, starting from today. Among the 7 treasures of the Glass Sect, today Chenyuan is honored as the divine child of the 7 treasures of the Glass Sect, and Ning Rongrong is honored as the goddess of the 7 treasures of the Glass Sect. Do you have any objections, elders or disciples?" At this moment, the announcement of Ning Fengji is naturally unobstructed. Even the elder who had mocked Chenyuan at this moment was extremely impressed and responded loudly, "Congratulations to the divine son and goddess of the 7 treasures in Glass Sect." At this moment, Chenxin turned her head and thought to Chenyuan, saying, "Get ready, let's set off immediately." "Where are we going?" "Starry Forest, hunt for the second soul ring and break through the great soul master." End of this chapter. Chapter 6. Breakthrough of the Great Soul Master. Two instruments grow together and form lotus branches. You are listening at Novel Full. Audio. Chapter 6 Breakthrough of the Great Soul Master. Two instruments grow together and form lotus branches. Hunting. Second Soul Ring. When Chenyuan comes back to his senses. Chenxin has taken him to the starry forest. The blade fell to the ground, and the dust source still has an unreal feeling. With just a thought, the sword box unfolds, and any sword can be summoned in an instant. And now, Chenyuan is already able to wield two swords. But in this way, choosing what kind of soul ring to use becomes a challenge. Under the protective path of the dust heart, we also approach the center of the starry forest unobstructed. There are more and more dangerous soul beasts in this area, and soul beasts have disappeared for 100 years. On the contrary, there are more and more thousand-year soul beasts. The fierce soul beast licked its fangs and stared fiercely at the sweet and delicious dust source with fierce eyes and red light. If it weren't for Chenxin being by the side, these dangerous soul beasts would have already rushed forward and divided up Chenyuan. However, even so, the dust source continued to move forward without stopping. Yuan, along the way, you have never taken notice of many hundred-year-old soul beasts, even the phantom-winged snake, which has been the main attack and destruction for 700 years, you have never wavered. Chenxin was a bit puzzled, but she didn't question her son. Instead, she patiently asked. Or do you already have your own thoughts in your heart, Yuan? As the words fell, the father and son's bodies paused and stopped in a haystack nest. The entrance of the nest is about 3 meters wide, so it is unlikely to be a good stubble, and there are large areas of white bones around the entrance. The dense white bones are stacked together, which is extremely terrifying. As if sensing the arrival of the father and son from Chenyuan, a deep tiger roar suddenly sounded from the nest. Light and shadow swept out like a black wind, and their sharp claws suddenly slapped towards the dust source. But before it could approach, Chenxian's 7-kill sword was unsheathed, and now he could freely restrain his killing breath. Just slapping the spine of the sword as a warning, pushing the massive black shadow aside. This is the first soul beast since entering the middle circle to dare to directly attack the heart of dust. And as it was photographed flying, it didn't feel timid either. Instead, it stepped on its cat steps and surrounded the source of dust, searching for the next attack opportunity. Looking at this soul beast, after searching for a long time, Chenyuan finally showed a satisfied smile. Father, this is the soul beast. The soul beast in front of me was a huge black tiger that was over 5 meters tall, with black fur and red eyes. Apart from a more fierce aura and a larger physique than a normal tiger. The most noteworthy feature is the king character on the head of this tiger, which is different from the king of other tiger-like soul beasts. The top of this black tiger's head is condensed with a golden pattern resembling a crown, although very blurry, the pattern can basically be determined. Chenxian was surprised and said, "This dark demon tiger. Well, it's really good. Both the power and soul power have reached a level that soul beasts of the same level do not have. As a third soul ring, it would be quite good." Chenyuan reached out his hand and pointed directly at the dark demon tiger appraisal, saying, "Father, he is my second soul ring." Second soul ring. Chenxian's puzzled voice increased 3 degrees, looking at Chenyuan with some confusion. Is this forcing the dust source to practice for too long, dragging down theoretical knowledge? Just as Chenxin was planning to continue explaining. Chenyuan turned his head to look up at Chenxian and said slowly, "I know that for soul masters, the lifespan of the second soul ring is usually 100 years, and the maximum lifespan is 764 years. This is the result of countless soul masters' generations of refinement." Watching Chenyuan speak up about this basic knowledge, Chenxian became even more confused and immediately explained, "Although that's the case, this dark demon tiger has a body size of over 4 meters and is already a millennium realm. If used as the third soul ring, it is indeed good, but the second soul ring is no longer the limit that soul masters can bear. Chenyuan shook his head and said stubbornly, I came to the depths to find the Millennium Soul Ring, Father. As a swordsman, one should have a sense of challenge, right? Chenxin didn't know what to say for a moment. After all, this situation had no precedent at all, and no one knew what the outcome would be. Chenxin also doesn't want Chenyuan to be trapped in danger. Just about to speak. Chenyuan clenched his fist tightly and recounted his demands. I clearly feel it. My sword is craving it, and this soul ring is definitely my best choice. This sentence is only for the purpose of calming down the emotions of the mortal heart. But in practical terms, the discovery of the dust source is clearly more significant than when it first acquired the soul ring. Under this year of cultivation, the physical strength has surpassed that of the vast majority of people. Even those who have already surpassed the great soul master are far inferior in terms of physical fitness. Therefore, Chenyuan wants to challenge this millennium soul beast and elevate his realm by forging a millennium-old legend with the second soul ring. Seeing that Chenyuan insisted on doing so, Chenxin no longer discouraged him. Being here, no matter what happens, at least one can become the trump card of the dust source. Even if the soul ring fails to absorb the dust source, it will not die as a result. After determining the target, Chenxin also allowed Chenyuan to leave his protection and fight against the dark demon tiger. 20 levels, 1 ring. Fighting a 1,000-year-old soul beast like this is like seeking death. But with the divine sword and swordsmanship in the box, Chenyuan is still on par with the dark demon tiger, even if there is no favorable timing and location. Finally, Chenxin used his power to suppress him, and Chenyuan killed him. The purple ring, which was approaching darkness, was covered with an indelible haze. From time to time, one can still see the resentment of the black demon tiger emerging in it. The dust source is naturally fearless about this. If one hesitates when absorbing a soul ring, how can they prove their way in the future? Buzz. The soul ring entered the body, and even the dust source couldn't help but snort, soaking blood in his mouth and nose. The massive soul power and obsession of the dark demon tiger are constantly wandering within the body of the dust source, recklessly colliding to destroy the body of the dust source from within. When absorbing soul rings across levels, most soul masters are defeated at this step. Chenyuan calmed down and unconsciously, a sword-like thought emerged in his body. Chenxin suddenly looked at Chenyuan in shock, who was focused on absorbing soul rings. In that moment, I actually felt the traces of my sword heart beating from Chenyuan's body. Although it is very weak, it cannot even be described as beginner. However, when Chenxin realized Jianxin, it was only in his 40s that he gained some insight. Deshang has been using it for over 5 years. And now, it only took Chenyuan a year, at the age of 7, to reach the threshold of the sword's heart. The soaring sword energy bloomed, completely absorbing the dual swords from the dark demon tiger's dust source box, and the sharp energy continued wherever it passed. The second soul skill. 2 etiquette generations and lotus ties. The explosive soul power attracted the Millennium Turtle to come, but it was just a face-to-face encounter. The turtle shell peels off and all 4 limbs are broken. 1 sword wounds a 1,000-year-old soul beast, 1 sword slays a 1,000-year-old soul beast. End of this chapter. Chapter 7. 12-year-old soul lord. The youngest soul lord in history. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 7. 12-year-old soul lord. The youngest soul lord in history. Just the cultivation of a great soul master, but the purple soul ring on his body is particularly dazzling. Looking at the entire soul master world, Chenyuan has already created history. It is a miracle of the past and present. Whether for the 7 treasures glass sect or Chenxin, this breakthrough by Chenyuan demonstrates extraordinary talents that are different from ordinary people. The Xian turtle that was killed naturally became the best supplement. Chenyuan flew back into the sword box with his twin swords and smiled brightly at Chenxin, saying, "Father, it's time to return to the sect." Chenxin slowly regained consciousness and quickly agreed with 2 words. "Oh, The great soul master absorbed the 1,000-year soul ring, and at the age of 7, he comprehended the sword heart. Each item shook Chenxin immensely, and this trip even made Chenxin feel. Even without mutual understanding, Chenyuan can still solve the dark demon tiger, but it will only take a little more time. After seeing the sword heart of Chenyuan, the sword that Chenyuan had not broken through for a long time seemed to have loosened traces at this moment. The father and son didn't say much and returned to the 7 Treasures Glass Sect along the way. After returning, I naturally reported on Ning Fengji. The sudden good news surprised Ning Feng, who was still somewhat worried about Ning Rongrong's upgrade issue. Ning Rongrong has not even broken through level 20. When Ning Rongrong heard Ning Fengji praising the source of dust again and was jealous, he ran to practice alone. As the only one in the history of the 7 Treasures Glass Sect. The most outstanding person who inherits the martial soul of the 7 Treasures Glass Pagoda. Ning Rongrong also has his own pride. Her upgrade speed has been much faster than that of a normal person, let alone with the assistance of top-level sections. But as long as the dust source appears, she feels that she is only overshadowed by the dust. This also further stimulated Ning Rongrong's stubbornness, and the 2 members of the sect also began practicing like an arms race. Every day and night, the 2 figures of the training ground and the main hall appear day and night. Divine sons practice swords, and goddesses practice souls. The competition between the 2 added immense pressure to the ordinary disciples invisibly. The elders who often come to train their disciples will point to the source of dust on the high platform of the training ground, using their unwavering spirit to stimulate many disciples. According to the elders' original words, it is. If you don't work hard now, how can you stand out in the future? Today's efforts are for tomorrow's better hardship. Such words. Although it had some effect, people completely gave up when they saw the dust source jump several levels in just 1 year. This special code is not a speed that humans can catch up with. The next day, the 7 Treasures Glass Sect. A gust of wind struck the entire sect. It is a mortal fate on the training ground. The upper body is no longer tied with a robe, and the lower body is only tied tightly with loose pants. Holding a sword with one hand, tossing and frolicking on a platform with less than 1 toe's combat power. Every moment is heart-wrenching, afraid of him falling off the stage. But unfortunately, it's just a little bit close. Even if the whole person's body leans forward, the center can always be stable on the lower plate. The towering purple light on his body clearly summons something. Soul Lord. Breakthrough. At this moment, the audience gradually regained their senses and said, "How old is junior brother Chen now?" "No, isn't today the god's 12th birthday gift?" "What? 12-year-old Soul Lord?" The disciple's voice suddenly increased 3 times. "Is this a demon?" This extraordinary feeling has made the disciples of the 7 Treasures Glass Sect a bit numb. Yes, what surprised them? This is the source of dust. Since it's junior brother Chen, there's nothing we can't do. After finishing the sword dance, wipe away the sweat from your body. Chenyuan left the training ground with a familiar car and arrived at Chenxin's residence, knocking twice to open the door of Chenxin's room. The Chenxin on stage had already finished practicing and looked at the arrival of Chenyuan in shock, probing and asking, "Yuaner, are you the Soul Lord?" Dust Fate just nodded. Sure enough. Chenxin finally sighed. In recent years, besides the rapid progress in soul power, Chenyuan's understanding of Jianxin has also deepened day by day. This child spends too much time polishing his swordsmanship, nurturing his sword with his own body, giving rise to the sword spirit and the embryonic form of his sword heart. Even surpassing oneself, at the age of 12, he has cultivated the field of swordsmanship and successfully occupied a place in Kendo. This couldn't help but make Chenxin feel the pressure, and during these days, she was also practicing in seclusion, intending to break through a higher realm. Since Chenyuan has been found, Chenxin has no intention of talking nonsense. Today is also your birthday, and I was already preparing to give a gift. Breaking through the Soul Lord is even more joyful. After receiving this news, Ning Fengji naturally did not refuse, but instead invited disciples to attend Chenyuan's birthday party on the basis of the original. Chenxin, on the other hand, came to the starry forest with the source of dust to hunt for a suitable third soul ring. The entire process was as expected, and even the age of the third soul ring was several times higher than that of a normal soul master, reaching a full 5,000 years. The third soul skill. The sword energy on the sword weighs 3 pounds. At the main hall. After obtaining the youngest soul master in the soul master realm, the 7 treasures glass sect divine child has broken through. I don't know how many sects have been invited to come and see the grace of the divine son. This includes many people from other sections. Among them, the leader of the Blue Electric King's sect was even more envious. Master Ning, the 7 treasures glass sect can produce this divine person, it's really envious of us. Ning Fengji just smiled and said, "You're joking. It's our sect's good fortune to have a source of dust in the 7 treasures glass sect. How could it be forced? It's better to say it's a blessing from heaven. If it weren't for this, how could we have both the divine son and the divine daughter at the same time?" The banquet was filled with this kind of division. The dust source couldn't handle it, so he had been sitting in the corner until Ning Fengji reminded him to appear. Ning Rongrong came over with a cup in his hand and stood beside Chenyuan, stuttering for a moment without knowing what to say. Chenyuan turned his head, blinked his eyes, but didn't speak. Although Ning Rongrong's attitude towards dust source was not very good at first. But after the establishment of the divine son and goddess, the already familial Chenxin and Ning Fengji became even tighter. There is inevitably more interaction between Chenyuan and Ning Rongrong. For Ning Rongrong, Chenyuan doesn't have many thoughts in his heart. It was only when the previously cold relationship gradually heated up that Chenyuan saw a more petite aspect of Ning Rongrong. For close people, Ning Rongrong always relies on the past and attaches great importance to this kind of care. Otherwise, there wouldn't be the feeling that Chenyuan would compete with her father at the beginning of junior high school. I saw Ning Rongrong stuttering and holding the cup, holding it in front of Chenyuan. The cup is filled with fruit juice, and it is obvious that Ning Rongrong cannot drink alcohol at his age. Ning Rongrong looked at Chenyuan and suddenly closed his eyes. He trembled as he held up his glass and drank the juice in one gulp. He shyly shouted from his mouth, "Congratulations to Chenyuan for entering the Soul Lord." "Hey, you girl." Before Chenyuan could say anything, Ning Rongrong fled with a flushed face and a lively atmosphere, huddled behind Ning Fengji, his gaze occasionally fixed on Chenyuan. Once the gaze of the dust source turned towards him, he shrank under Ning Fengji's coat to escape. Chenyuan couldn't help but burst into laughter, and his heart was filled with a hint of warmth. Ning Rongrong, there's no such thing as a big lady's airs. End of this chapter. Chapter 8. Shrek College. Dogs don't even go. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 8 Shrek College. Dogs don't even go. Xiaoyuaner will be more promising than your father in the future. Yes, Grandpa Yu, the entire birthday gift process is not long. After the final banquet, Chenyuan, guided by Chenxin and Ning Fengji, sent off the last batch of guests. The interior of the hall has been almost cleaned. Seeing no other situation, Chenyuan sat on the chair and let out a deep sigh. I am indeed not very suitable for this kind of scene. Compared to dealing with a lot of people, it's more practical to cultivate. Moreover, the elders of this group of elders can each add up to 800 insightful individuals. Everyone has a profound understanding of how to handle people and society. Even the most straightforward person who just left may feel relaxed throughout the entire relationship. If it weren't for Ning Fengji privately explaining their secret words to herself one by one, Chenyuan may not understand what they are all saying. There is a risk of being surrounded at any moment. Ning Rongrong leaned over and sat on the side of Chenyuan, propping his face and blinking at Chenyuan's appearance. But as long as Dust Yuan's gaze shifts, Ning Rongrong will instinctively leave and dare not look at it. This makes the dust source quite distressed. Even if there is no freezing point in the relationship between the two, there still seems to be a bit of a grudge. Chenyuan shook his head to drive away distractions. Whatever you do, just be good at yourself. After all, there are things from the past, and it's normal for Ning Rongrong to have some barriers. Seeing Chenyuan start to close his eyes and rest, Ning Rongrong sat beside him, admiring this handsome face. For a moment, Ning Rongrong couldn't help but get closer and take a fancy look. Chenyuan's eyelashes are so long. Why can Chenyuan's skin be even whiter and more delicate than his own? This nose is very straight, this mouth is very big. A momentary warm breath spread across the surface. Chenyuan only felt an itch in his face. Before Ning Rongrong's thoughts could fully recover, Ning Fengji's voice suddenly rang out from behind. Rongrong, is there still a source of dust? If both of you are here, it will be easy to handle. There's just one thing I need to discuss with you. Ning Fengji's words opened the eyes of Chenyuan, who was already closed and focused. A brief rest can already dispel most of the fatigue. On the other hand, Ning Rongrong, who was sitting on the side, looked twisted, with his body stretched taut and his head buried in his chest, afraid to look directly at anyone here. This phenomenon is not uncommon, and the dust source did not continue to pay attention to it, but instead looked at Ning Fengji on the side. Ning Fengji's body was slightly collapsed, unable to hold up the coat, and it appeared loose, indicating that she was already a bit tired. Ning Fengji coughed for a moment and said slowly, "The fact that Chenyuan is going to hold a birthday banquet reminds me that you are almost all of your age. So, yesterday I discussed with Uncle Chen and planned to send you both to Shrek College for further education, so that we can better improve ourselves." Chenyuan and Ning Rongrong couldn't help but answer in unison, "Shrek Academy. Yes, that's a college that only accepts monsters, which is a good place for experience." Ning Fengji nodded. Ning Fengji continued to explain, "It's a pity that I have been practicing within the sect and cannot appreciate the outside world. The disciples of the Seven Treasures and Glass sect also adhere to the principle of traveling all over the world in order to maintain their current power." Unlike the curiosity that Ning Rongrong was attracted to, Chenyuan just frowned. Ning Rongrong doesn't know where Shrek is, but knowing the source of dust in the original work is impossible. That is exactly the college that Tang San also exists in. Among them, the dean is Frand, a level 83 agile attack type soul warrior. There is also the only teacher who has been with them all along, Zhao Wuji, who is a soul saint in his 70s. Chenyuan was momentarily speechless. Let yourself go to Shrek College. This teaching lineup is simply shivering compared to the Seven Treasures Glass sect. Whether it is cultivation resources or targeted teaching, there are not even a few shortcomings. There are so many elders in the Seven Treasures Glass sect, either Soul Douluo or title, not to mention that there are 2 supreme elders in the sect, and Gu Ronggu Douluo is also among them. Isn't it much better than Shrek College to have such a top coaching group to teach? No matter how bad it is, I still have the cheap old man Chenxin. As both martial souls of the Sword series, the similarity between the two goes without saying. All the skills condensed from Chenxian's body are enough for Chenyuan to eat well for a while. Ning Rongrong was somewhat excited and nodded curiously at Ning Fengji's request. Ning Feng smiled and then turned his head to look at Chenyuan, saying, "Chenyuan, let's go together." The words have not yet finished. Chenyuan bowed and apologized, saying softly, "Uncle Ning, I won't go to Shrek College." This sentence puzzled Ning Feng for a moment. Chenyuan has always been a well-behaved, sensible, and obedient child, let alone causing any trouble for himself. When I have free time, I can also control Ning Rongrong for myself. It is precisely because of the control of the dust source that I have the time to develop the entire Seven Treasures Glass Sect. But now Ning Fengji asked with confusion, Chenyuan, what is this? Is it difficult? Do you have any plans? Chenyuan straightened up and explained calmly, before attending Shrek College, Uncle Ning, you should have known everything. Undoubtedly, I don't have any doubts about Uncle Ning's vision. My qualifications are on the mainland, and any college can be chosen by me. But Uncle Ning, do you still remember what my martial soul is? Ning Feng was speechless for a moment. Chenyuan continued, it's a sword. That's also why I haven't had the idea to go to the college yet. After all, on this continent, is there a teacher who is more qualified to teach me than my father? This is impossible, and the dust source naturally knows this. So based on the current situation at Shrek College, even if Fran knelt down and begged him, he wouldn't go. Ning Fengji was also said to be completely speechless. That's Kendo Chenxin, and Ning Fengji naturally wouldn't doubt Chenxin's strength. However, Ning Fengji has no way to refute Chenyuan's statement. Who in the world is more suitable than a father teaching his son? Moreover, this father is also a renowned swordsman with exceptional skills. After filtering out the first condition, those who can teach the qualifications of the dust source compared to the dust heart may not have been born yet, right? Ning Fengji felt a bit helpless, but couldn't resist Chenyuan. He could only continue with the words. Chenyuan said the same thing, compared to going to Shrek College for training. Swords can only truly function in the hands of the right person. Then Chenyuan should stay within the Seven Treasures Glass Sect. With Uncle Chen's guidance, it would be much better. Say it. Ning Fengji looked at Ning Rongrong on the side and said with righteous words, Rongrong must go. It's time for this young lady to go out and experience. End of this chapter. Chapter 9. Heart of Kendo, Meaning of Kendo. Pioneering the Douluo Continent. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 9 Heart of Kendo, Meaning of Kendo. Pioneering the Douluo Continent. Since Chenyuan doesn't want to go, it's not easy to force Ning Fengji. I originally planned to have Chenyuan and Rongrong go together, so that they could have some support for each other. Priority should be given to the future, and the overall progress of the dust source should not be affected by just one experience. Therefore, only Ning Rongrong remained as the candidate to go to Shrek. After hearing that the two of them had turned into only one person starting out, Ning Rongrong's entire small face suddenly collapsed. No matter how much fuss, it cannot change Ning Fengji's determination. After all, according to the characteristics of the Seven Treasures Glass Pagoda, growth can only be achieved after visiting many places. That experience is essential. Ning Rongrong's itinerary was also confirmed quite quickly. The birthday banquet was decided tonight, and the next day we had already started packing our luggage. Before parting ways, Ning Rongrong reluctantly stayed by Chenyuan's side. A pair of dark circles under my eyes remained unchanged for a long time, and no matter how it looked, I cried for a long time at night without falling asleep. At the entrance of the sect gate, the two deacons of the Seven Treasures Glass Sect looked helplessly at the two people holding each other. Rather than saying it was two people hugging each other, it is more accurate to say that Ning Rongrong unilaterally held on to Chenyuan without letting go. Ning Fengji was unable to personally send Ning Rongrong to Shrek College due to handling some sect affairs. This kind of thing naturally falls on the heads of other managers. But the difference in identity makes it impossible for them to force Ning Rongrong to leave. The two of them could only smile apologetically, Miss, it's time we set off. If we miss the time, the Lord will take us. Ning Rongrong doesn't care what these two people say, his small face buried in Chenyuan's arms crying and crying, with a runny nose and tears. Ning Rongrong raised his crying nose and repeatedly reminded Chenyuan, "Brother, I have to leave. You have to remember me. Remember to come to Shrek Academy to see me. Don't forget me, you know." Chenyuan also responded with a mix and match, looking helpless. He didn't realize that Ning Rongrong would be so clingy during this kind of separation. Chenyuan could only continue to comfort him, "Go ahead and practice well. Don't be afraid if you suffer injustice outside. Come back and tell me, I'll vent my anger on you." After coaxing for several hours, Ning Rongrong's emotions finally stabilized. "I walked down the mountain gate 3 times in a row, until I could no longer see my figure clearly." This little girl Dust Source shook his head. After going down, Ning Rongrong will meet Tang San and others. And if one wants to surpass the halo, they can only work harder to break this absolute shackle. After Ning Rongrong left, the sect regained its purity once again. However, without her sect, there would be less excitement. "Don't worry if you don't go down the mountain with Rongrong. This little girl has been eating you hard lately." In the inner hall, in the dwelling of Chenxin. Every day when the Dust Source has doubts, they come here to answer them one by one. But today, Chenxin took the initiative to start a conversation. Chenxin asked intentionally or unintentionally, occasionally probing Chenyuan's emotions. However, Chenxin found that his son's emotions were as calm as an old monk, without any fluctuations. Having a strong mind, not swayed by small things. Such a mentality is simply a natural talent. Chenyuan said calmly, "Rongrong needs experience, so naturally I have my own business. So, I hope my father can start fighting swords with me." The level of soul power steadily increases with the injection of resources. In this situation of approaching stability, if one wants to break through an ability and achieve a certain level of success, they can only use their most skilled sword as a breakthrough point. During this period, Chenyuan felt that he had gradually entered a new realm. "When I received the sword, the palpitations in my heart and the shift in consciousness surprised me greatly." According to the theory proposed by Chenxin. This feeling can undoubtedly be supported only by Chenxin. But besides the sword heart, there is also an inexplicable feeling lingering in the body. That was a feeling that Chenxin had never described before, wandering outside the body and wielding sword techniques like arms and fingers. Extend the ending arm at the point of passing. Regarding the requirements for the sword that Chenyuan intends to have. Chenxin was a bit surprised, but soon understood. I see. You're planning to start refining your sword heart. Although it may be too early for Chenxin to say, it is not surprising to summarize the talents on Chenyuan's body at present. Quickly, the two of them arrived at a training ground specially opened up in the back mountain. Training dust sources under the public has become a thing of the past. Now is the 1.1 tutoring for Chenxin. Chenxin casually picked an iron sword from the weapon rack. Neither of them uses martial soul power. Practice swordsmanship solely based on skill. Every sword battle takes place only after Chenyuan has gained insight. From the initial one-shot lockdown to now. The dust source can already walk through a stick of incense in the hands of the dust heart. A slightly gloomy sky began to drizzle lightly. Rainy days are not a good environment for swordsmen to settle down. Because raindrops can disrupt the 5 senses, even causing mental distress and even disrupting performance. Tick the raindrops as big as beans gradually continued, with a continuous crisp sound. And the two people who were 10 steps apart were also waiting quietly. Quietly wait for an opportunity. Under the obstruction of rainwater, the dust source simply closed its eyes. Sealing off one's own vision, making hearing and sensation more sensitive. Listening attentively to the stirring sensation of the heart of dust and sword suddenly. At the moment when the rain grew stronger, Dust Source's sword broke through the rain and struck directly. Aiming at the shoulder, the iron sword swung away the dust, pressing the momentum of the dust heart forward continuously. Chang! Chenxin relies on his seasoned sword skills to block it, and this kind of direct stab is a basic skill. I was still wondering why Chenyuan would use this basic move. But suddenly there was a tearing sound in the rain. Sting! Chenxin suddenly noticed a sword mark on his robe. When? Chenyuan's sword should have never touched him at all. Without time to think, Dust Source is another sword. It is obvious that even if the Dust Heart blocks it, it still cannot avoid the tearing of the robe. The moves are not fatal, but they are like a loud slap on Chenxian's face. He couldn't understand at all, where did the injury come from? Only a closed source of dust can know this scene. The world has turned black in the heart of Dust Source. And among them, there is an extension of consciousness stained with white. The sword points to, extends to, outward, and further away. Extension is a sword, it is consciousness. Wherever passed, it was all sword-like. Until this feeling spreads all over the body and can expand into a circular shape without dead corners. The sword stops the rain and extinguishes it. It lasted for a day without rest. Before the body is exhausted. The sword of Chenyuan stopped at Chenxin's throat for the first time. Chenyuan trembled as he raised his sword, revealing a brilliant smile towards the stagnant Chenxin in the distance. Father, I won. Unlike Professor Chenxin's swordsmanship, Jianxin. This is a brand new path created by Chenyuan alone. There was no absolute will in this world, but now there is one. Sword Intent. End of this chapter. Chapter 10. Ning Rongrong was bullied. Depart Shrek Academy. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 10. Ning Rongrong was bullied. Depart Shrek Academy. This is something that Chenxin has never seen in all these years of living. It was precisely the emergence of the dust source that seemed to have loosened the bottleneck of his swordsmanship, which he had not been able to get closer to for many years. Surprisingly, I lost to my own son when fighting against the sword. A 14-year-old boy. Chenxian gave a carefree smile. This is a good thing. The dust source is showing more and more demons, please explain over there. The upper limit of the future of dust sources is difficult for ordinary people to reach. My own path will not become the vertex of the dust source, but will further break through. For the dust source, this is also what he wants to see. Can Jianyi stop practicing now? It's not possible, on the contrary, day after day, Chenyuan began to carve out the meaning of this sword. Appoint an hour with Chenxin every day to fight the sword. Father and son complement each other, sometimes winning and sometimes losing. The sword intent was gradually carved into shape. Has the sword intention changed? During this period, as a companion, Chenxian has also made progress. Chenxin only felt that she had increasingly touched the threshold that Chenyuan had encountered. Invisibly, white light touch can be seen. But when Chenxian used this feeling to look at Chenyuan again, his sword intent had suddenly changed. An indescribable and mysterious feeling lingers in my heart for a long time. Chenyuan shook his sword, and the sound of the sword continued. He did not swing his sword, but spontaneously a sword aura swept through Chenyuan's heart. Chenyuan pulled out a sword flower with one hand and respectfully said to Chenxian, Father, I have completed it, the realm of swords. Something I had never heard before piqued my interest. The realm of swords. In the Douluo Continent, the condensed sword heart has already become unattainable to ordinary people. The sword intent of Chenyuan's breakthrough surprised Chenxian for a while. Now there is the sword domain again, even the dust heart cannot see through to what extent the current dust source can achieve. Chenxian raised his sword and looked around, his sword spirit radiating with a hint of fur. He looked at Chenyuan with great interest and said, Sword domain, sword domain. Just release it and let me see how much weight your sword domain weighs. As the words fell, the instantly unfolding circle startled Chenxian's heart. No matter what posture you take to deal with a dusty situation where your hands are loose and holding a sword. Chenxin always has a feeling of being seen through. And the sword intent that had just condensed was instantly suppressed by the sword domain of the dust source, completely unable to be unleashed. Chenyuan just smiled, but he could see clearly where Chenxin was puzzled. The condensed, thick, and solemn sword is intended to surround the dust edge into a circular field. The 360-degree diffusion without blind spots allows the dust source to have a clear understanding of everything in the field. Once entering the field, relying solely on sword intention dust source can already suppress many opponents. In the field, Jianwei has also grown exponentially. This is the domain exclusively belonging to the dust source. The sword domain. Chenxin didn't expect that her son could optimize and create an area that she couldn't even achieve while already making breakthroughs. He put down his sword with some helplessness and said, "Today you won again." In terms of Kendo, Chenyuan has become a pioneer, opening up a separate path based on the original foundation. Similarly, with the steady improvement of sword intent, there is also soul power. During the time after being promoted to Soul Lord, Ning Rongrong was gone, so Ning Fengji made every effort to allocate more resources to the use of dust source. The current soul power has exceeded level 34, and it is difficult to encounter opponents in the entire soul master world. The next day. As usual, Chenyuan will first go to the main hall, and his daily itinerary will focus on the process of seeing Ning Fengji, practicing soul power, practicing physical fitness, and battling swords with Chenxin. I never slack off for a day. But as soon as he entered the palace gate today, he heard a mournful cry. With a hint of sobbing and comfort. The familiar voice couldn't help but make Chenyuan curious to look at the seats in the palace. Ning Fengji was still anxiously reviewing the documents, while comforting Ning Rongrong who was lying on the table crying. Seeing the dust source coming into the main hall, Ning Fengji quickly lit up his eyes. Dust source naturally wouldn't refuse, walking up in 3 or 2 steps, landing silently without any attention. After bowing to Ning Fengji first, Chenyuan then gently patted Ning Rongrong's back and asked tentatively, "Rongrong." The sudden touch made Ning Rongrong's body stiffen. Shaking up, tears burst uncontrollably as he saw that the incoming person was a source of dust. Ning Rongrong rushed forward with his arms wrapped around Chenyuan's waist, burying his head in tears and saying, "Brother, you finally came. Oh, you don't even know what I've encountered in Shrek." Ning Rongrong seemed to have found an outlet, pouring out everything in his mind. Shrek Academy said they had messed up some 6 monsters, but everyone couldn't get along with Ning Rongrong. Even the dandy young master Dai Mubai didn't look at his own character and would come over to intervene. Each teacher is also straightforward, teaching either pure physical training or claiming to have a mistemperament. Ning Rongrong, who had originally followed Ning Fengji's request to go to Shrek College, has already restrained himself very much. Even if it were a change, it would not be so fast. There is no such thing as a gentle means, but everyone isolates Ning Rongrong like they treat an outsider. During collective training, it was even more sinister and sometimes necessary to jump up and mock. As long as one of the auxiliary soul masters makes a mistake, some people will come up to mock and say, "This is the miss from the 7 treasures glass sect." That's just it. At first, Ning Rongrong didn't intend to argue with this group of people, but they became increasingly excessive, even openly isolated. In the end, even normal training was not possible. I can only return to the sect to complain. Ning Rongrong seemed to have vomited up all the grievances he had suffered after going down the mountain. Ning Fengji, who was just listening on the side, was already a bit angry. The receipt letter I just wrote feels like a crumpled piece of paper, so I have to rewrite it. Ning Rongrong lifted his head from Chenyuan's arms, pouting his mouth and probing with tearful eyes, "Brother, am I really useless? They all say that to me." Chenyuan sat down and pampered Ning Rongrong's hair, saying, "How could that be? Rongrong's talent is so great, it's just that Nasir doesn't know how to teach, he has no eyes." With the comfort of the dust source, Ning Rongrong's almost collapsed mood also improved a lot. She relies on worldly affairs to enjoy the warmth of her family, hiding in her arms as if she can resist all hardships. After speaking, Chenyuan's gaze turned to Ning Fengji, who was already slightly angry, and he spoke softly, "Uncle Ning, Rongrong's matter may not have passed like this. Shrek Academy is arrogant and domineering. If they are not allowed to suffer, they may only become more rampant in the future. I don't know what Rongrong will be like." End of this chapter.